Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to do part two of who is the second Gary Gygax. All right. So I've already spoken about who, kind of a good list, but let's keep going here. So Mike Mertz comes along, and then we get Mackenzie DeArmas. Now I think Mackenzie DeArmas is really interesting. I think she's on the short list for to be the first female Dungeons and Dragons lead. There has never been a Dungeons and Dragons lead in 5 decades. I believe we're on track for that, and I don't think there's any possibility that Dungeons and Dragons can ever get another male Dungeons and Dragons lead. I don't think they can do it, and the reason why is they have a strong history of progressiveness, right? And I think if you well, the question is, here's my point. If they choose another male Dungeons & Dragons lead, then it means their progressiveness was gesturing, posturing, just not genuine, right? Because you can't keep women out for 5 decades. If you are as dedicated to progressiveness as Dungeons & Dragons has been, there's got to be a point where you're like, enough is enough. We need to have a female Dungeons & Dragons lead. So I think Mackenzie DeArmas is on that list, and I think she came out she was like shot out of a cannon. She really came strong into D&D design. She put forward, she claimed that she put forward the first autistic character in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not sure that was actually achieved. I have opinions on that. I think you actually have to, you can't just say it. It was almost like, oh, hey, everybody, Dumbledore is LGBTQ, and you're like, was he? You're like, the only reason I'm asking is you didn't put it anywhere in the book, and you also really didn't put it in the movie either. You kind of have to put something in there, I don't, that's my take. But she really put a bold new stamp, and I think she also spoke very eloquently about representation and taking representation in Dungeons and Dragons farther in Big Four. So I think Mackenzie DeArmas, sometimes I thought, okay, is she, the second Gary Gygax? So that's a good list, right? So who is it? I'm going to give it to you. I believe the second Gary Gygax is James Wyatt, okay? Now, why? Well, it has to do with canon. James Wyatt has done something with Dungeons and Dragons canon that has never been done on any intellectual property in the world. And what he's done is exactly like what Gary did. So it is my supposition that Gary did not create Dungeons & Dragons as a game, but that he created it as a human improvement engine, specifically designed to improve everybody at the table, the Dungeon Master and every Dragon Master, right? And to help them grow, learn, change, transform, okay? Improve, grow, transform, okay? And he hid all this in a game because he knew you can't just say, hey, eat your broccolis. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with self-help books. It doesn't work with couch scribblers. It doesn't work, right? Nobody wants to do the work, right? They want to be entertained. They want to have joy. They want to be excited. They want tactical infinity. And Gary delivered all of that, right? So who's the next person who snuck it past everybody? And the answer is James Wyatt. He did some incredible things. So first of all, read his work on Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Just read the first 3 pages of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. And essentially what he did was he said every single game of Dungeons & Dragons that's ever been run is D&D canon. That's pretty bold. That's huge, right? In addition to that, James Wyatt was the one that did the first Innistrad, the first Dungeons & Dragons MTG mix, okay? And that really set all this in motion, right? And so let me explain this, okay? So there's been this Hasbro WotC gesturing about, is Magic the Gathering canon, right? And at this point, you literally shouldn't listen to anything they say because it's nonsense, right? As far as if it is or if it isn't canon, we decide. You're like, wait a second, what do you mean by that? Well, let's walk it through, right? You're like, okay, Universe Beyond. Lord of the Rings is Universe Beyond. It's not Dungeons & Dragons canon. And you're like, well, wait a second. you're printing it on Magic the Gathering cards, and Dominaria and Strixhaven and Innistrad and Ixalan and Theros and Ravnica, and these are all you've literally written these into Dungeons and Dragons, right? Strixhaven even says the entire point of Strixhaven is so that people can come from all over, and then you train them as planeswalkers and wizards, right? Like this is all, like everything in Magic the Gathering should be Dungeons and Dragons canon, right? And so then you're like, well, you're like, wait a second, there's a Fortnite. Is Fortnite canon to Dungeons and Dragons? The answer is yes, right? But you couldn't. The answer, in my humble opinion, is yes. Okay, but Hasbro's been playing this silly little game, right? Like, oh no. Lord of the Rings isn't canon to Dungeons and Dragons. Oh wait, didn't you just drop D&D Lord of the Rings into D&D Beyond, and it's fully canon now? Literally D&D Lord of the Rings. So that means that when you printed MTG Lord of the Rings, it was just as canon on day one as it is today, right? And so that's the point. Like, you're like, even they don't know what they're like. Of course it's D&D canon, and you're like, wait a second, didn't the first day Dungeons and Dragons was created on February 7th, 1974, weren't hobbits literally listed in the book? Didn't you just print a book that said Lord of the Rings was in D&D from literally day one? So of course it was always canon. So your nonsense that it wasn't canon was literally nonsense, right? So, but get this, all right? Let me take you all the way there, right? Now, all of this is, so basically, let me explain this. Every single Magic the Gathering card, in my humble opinion, is 100% D&D canon. And it's because of James Wyatt. Okay, here's why. So first of all, he mixed them, right? And then there was this little period where Hasbro was like, oh, well, yeah, so of course, Ravnica and Theros and Strixhaven are 100% D&D canon. There's literally Dungeons and Dragons source books for those. But these other universes beyond, they're beyond, right? Well, when did that end? Well, let's get there. The best way to think about Magic the Gathering, every single Magic the Gathering card that's ever been printed, is simply an unbound page of Dungeons and Dragons. And so really, Dungeons and Dragons is every D&D canon hardback, red ampersand, black spine, right? And then reverse that for 2024, red spine, black ampersand, right? Those are all D&D canon source books. But what you can do then is you can take the 50,000 cards, the individual unique cards that exist in Magic. You can just bind them together in one book. They're all pages in the D&D canon book. Now let me explain how. What happens through Stranger Things? So Magic Gathering, canon to Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, that's undeniable. It's like it's done. It's already cooked, right? Okay, but wait, is it all of Magic Gathering? Let's get there together. Okay, so basically, if you make a commander deck, right, you can set Mike the Dungeon Master from Stranger Things as the commander. But get this, they're like, well, wait, that'll only cover in white and green, right? But then you can make Commander, he has a special ability, right, where he can combine and be commanders with his friends together, right? And with those friends together, you can literally cover every single color in Magic the Gathering, right? And that means that every card that can be cast in Magic the Gathering can be put into a commander deck, right? And then once you do that, the narrative is that Mike the Dungeon Master is telling the story, right? He's telling the Warhammer 40K story. He's telling the the Dominaria mixed with Ghostbusters story. He's telling the Fortnite Hatsune Miku Baldur's Gate story. Mike the Dungeon Master and all his friends are telling the story as a Dungeons and Dragons story. They're using Dungeons and Dragons to tell the story. James Wyatt has brought everything full circle, okay? And I'm the only person on the planet who realizes it, because he snuck it past everyone. He snuck it past the executives. He snuck it, not just the executives at Hasbro and WotC, but literally the executives at Fortnite and Ghostbusters and the Lord of the Rings estate and Warhammer, It's all D&D canon now, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.